Thank you so much. A very warm welcome from our side. Nice to have so many people in the room. Changing the landscape of corporate innovation is the topic, and it's explicitly about one certain field in this new landscape of corporate innovation, and this is the field of startup corporate collaboration. Today we have representatives of a corporate, of a startup, and also representatives from a consulting perspective with us on board, and we'll discuss the next 25 minutes about this topic. Slido is open for you. We are happy for your questions and also integrating them into the discussion. Maybe let's start with a short introduction to what you guys are doing. Just a very brief one, since we only have just a couple of minutes. And maybe you can start from the Merck perspective, Michael.
Sure, yeah. Welcome. My name is Michael Gamba. I'm heading the Merck Innovation Center based in Darmstadt. We started actually our company more than 350 years ago, but now we are also working with younger companies, with the startups. We started this process in our accelerator in September 2015. And yeah, I'm happy to discuss how this changes our landscape of innovation in the company.
Thanh you so much. Nikita, do you want to continue?
Yes,
what
sure.
is Agranimo doing actually?
My name is Nikita Gulin. I'm a co-founder and CEO of Agranimo. We were last year's generation of the Merck Accelerator, which is why I'm here to provide the other side perspective on this collaboration. And at Agranimo, we work in agriculture. We use microclimate analysis to help forecast and optimize fresh produce supply chain. So the timing of the harvest, the volume of the harvest, how to get it in the best way to the supermarket. And on the other side, help the farmer.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thomas, what is your role at PwC?
Yeah, I'm a partner and responsible for innovation and digital. And actually, we help companies to arrive in the 21st century and really bridging the gap between startups and corporates.
Thank you so much. Short introduction to my side. My name is Anton. I'm heading Pioneers Discover. Pioneers Discover is a unit of Pioneers that is also helping corporates to attract startups, to collaborate with startups, and also help them to bridge the gap into the startup ecosystem. And we'll directly touch base on this topic already in the beginning. So maybe from your motivational background and speaking from a corporate perspective first, why are corporates actually considering collaborating with startups?
I think one reason is mentioned in the title of this session, changing the landscape of innovation. So we have been focusing on internal R&D mainly. So that's still a really important bucket. We spend 2.1 billion per year on R&D. We're a healthcare and chemicals company, as you might know. But we also found out we have to look beyond the fence, right? Good ideas are not only coming from the inside. We have to look what's coming from the outside and how we can leverage these ideas and also come up with maybe new topics that we didn't have on the radar so far. So we also try to develop further, extend the businesses, and that's why we are working with the startup teams. Another good result of the work is that we get a lot of good insights on upcoming trends, which might be interesting for us. So from the applications we receive, we always try to develop ourselves a trend radar to see what are the next big topics, which you then can align with a Gartner hype cycle and so on, to see what might things that we should have a look at in the future within the Innovation Center. And the last one, which is also a really interesting point, is the employer branding, because we are, as I said, an old company, we are big corporate, but we want to attract the young people that work on startups, work on digital topics. So it's a good first start to attract the startups there, and also sometimes to motivate people to stay if their startup fails, for example, which happens from time to time. So we get to know each other quite well, and yeah, we have many good reasons to work with the teams.
Nikita, is this a value proposition that is attractive for a startup to collaborate with corporates, and also the points that we have just been mentioned?
Well, no, not really. I mean, this is a side effect, I think, of our work with the corporate. But for us, the main goal is typically you get a good name as your partner or as your customer. If you're in B2B, you understand how to work with a big corporate, so you can replicate that model within your team and take it further. Big corporates have a global reach a lot of the time, so you kind of hope that by having one project here, you can multiply it then all over the world, so more sales coming in. And there's typically more R&D resources. So if there's something that you are not immediately thinking of developing, but would like to see happening that would complement your product perhaps, then it's also a great way to influence the birth of that project.
And at which stage did you start considering also approaching corporates? I mean, you basically started with an idea some years ago, but what was kind of the maturity that you needed to reach to also say, okay, now we are ready to address corporates with what we are doing?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we wanted to have a stable customer base, something to rely on, to know exactly the process of product building and sales. So that was the stage that I would approach a large corporate. But in the case of Merck Accelerator, it was from the kind of innovation accelerator part where it wasn't so risky for us to start working together. So you can start anytime, really.
Thank you. Thomas, the two of us, we have the high privilege that we can see this from a very neutral position. So what is your kind of external perspective on the whole topic of startup corporate collaboration? Why are both sides considering actually to collaborate?
Okay, there were actually two questions. One, still startups and corporates are oil and water in the real world. And a little bit, I want to go also to this question. Can you please name some good examples or a bad one? First, yes, there are a couple of reasons why startup needs the corporates, money, access to clients, and the real deep business know-how. This is for sure. On the other side, corporates, valid reasons, they wanted to get in touch in, let's say, agile development, quick market access, and how can you actually experience an agile way of working, let's say it that way. So this is the reasons, what they have in mind. But at the end of the day, even if they think they want it, they're not ready for each other. So that means the startup is not ready for a corporate because they don't understand each other and even do not have the time and mentality and the background to understand. And the same is with the corporates, because just imagine you have people, they are 20, 30 years in the same company. They have clear processes. They have a scalable series product, let's say. They have a hierarchy. They are lost tomorrow if all of a sudden you say, okay, you don't have a boss, you have to make your own rules, and you have no job description. So it's clear you have to prepare them first. So this is very important. And before I want to answer this question, look, what is success or not success? In terms of having an image to be also in the startup world, in terms of scouting for trends, and in terms of talents. A couple of successful programs, even one, and there can I talk, and we talked beforehand, the Metro Acceleration, it's a success because an image. Is it worse for that, and what came out? And then I name three big ones, Bertelsmann, Axel Springer, Plug and Play, with Techstars, the Metro, and with Daimler, because I worked with all of them. In that way, that they were for image and they had trend scouting, yes. In terms what came out of all the journey, okay, you know probably MyTaxi, Movil or whatever from Daimler. What do you know from Metro? Nothing. What came out? But it's always, and that's why it's so hard to say. If you have the ambition, you do it just to get a better image and to get access. Yes. In terms of getting out new business models.
But maybe let's ask some corporate perspective here on stage. How do you consider success for your program?
Maybe first I want to add to what Thomas said. So you're totally right. I think when we first started with this activity, and also Nikita will for sure agree, it's really hard to learn both languages, right? So we need to understand them, they need to understand us, which is not easy. I think it works out. If both sides want to understand each other and work together, then you can bridge a lot of these gaps, so that's really important. And then maybe something, an important point I forgot to mention when you asked me why we do that, is actually the work with the teams afterwards, because Nikita is here, because we collaborate still after the program. He was in the program last year in summer, as he said. But our main goal is afterwards to collaborate. It's not to start next big unicorn. That's hopefully his goal in the end, and to make a lot of money. But we want to support our internal projects together with the startups and speed them up and give them like another 12, for example, right? And that's what's happening with this team, which is from our point of view, one of the key success factors.
And how do you measure the success? We already got a question regarding KPIs. Is it the number of ventures that you've started, the number of ventures that you brought to the market together with startups? What's your KPIs that you're tracking?
Actually, also we are corporate and everybody thinks every corporate has lots of KPIs. We try to get not too many, to be honest, not get rid. I think we are getting closer, but we are still young, I would say, compared to our corporate history. So we started in 2015. That's why we don't have hard KPIs yet. But and that's also what we discussed before we joined the stage, is what we measure is how many teams do we have out of a program to work with afterwards, because then we make serious business. It's not just having it there. It's not a marketing exercise. It's making business with the team, helping our projects to be faster and more successful. And that's for me the main KPI, although it's not written down in that sense.
Mm-hmm. Speed is also a topic that we have already here as well. Nikita, from your perspective, how did it help you to work together with Merck and also speed up your process in implementing something new?
So I think speed is something that a lot of startup mentors sometimes warn you against working with a corporate. They tell you if you focus too much on this project and you put a lot of faith, you think, oh, it's such a big project, I'm going to get so much out of it. And then it takes you 8 months and you're no longer there to see the end of it. So I think with Merck Accelerator particularly, it's quite a good structure to... It gives you 3 months, you get some funding for it, it's unattached, to really be inside of the company, be in the office with the different departments and have a specialized team to help you find the right connections within the large corporate that you're working with. And so from that perspective, I think the project we're running together now with Merck wouldn't be there if it wasn't for those 3 months where I was just browsing, meeting different people, spending time kind of finding what are the goals of different departments. Sometimes you don't even know some departments. So those kind of things I think corporates should be working more on, like trying to help startups understand what they need, what can be the collaboration, and then on the other side, we then, while there, provide certain feedback and...
So Merck obviously has a process for you in place. How did that process look like? You have been scouted, I guess, or you approached them? How does it look like? Especially since you're an agricultural startup and probably not the closest to Merck, if you like.
Yeah, that is a good question. In fact, the first email I received from Merck Accelerator, I ignored it. And then my co-founder told me, yeah, they mentioned agriculture. I said, yeah, but Merck doesn't have anything to do with it. Why would I waste time applying? And then the second email came 1 month later, and I was like, oh, well, you've got to do what you've got to do. So I put a few hours, and then, what I obviously didn't know was that...
fixing the room, just keep on talking.
What I obviously didn't know was that there were internal projects, there was an innovation field focused on our industry. So if I'd known that before, obviously I would have applied without any question. So then when I started an actual personal interaction with the Accelerator team, then they provided that input and I was like, oh, okay, well then, we can do this and this together. Then I had a lot of ideas. So yes, they do have a process. So once we got in, then you can, you should define a project early on. And then what is important, I think, that both the internal department and the startup, they have a shared budget to implement that project. So that means that the internal department doesn't need to quickly allocate any of their own budget to it. And as a startup, you justify why you're kind of spending your time defining a new project with instead of just selling your product, So I think that part is really crucial, and then that allows you this 2-3 months to get to a certain milestone when all of a sudden this project is justified for the department, so they can allocate a budget, and then it's also justified for you as a startup because it would be a much higher budget. For example, you can implement your product, and then it becomes also valuable for you. So I think that part, those 3 months, which is the duration of the program, is important.
Thank you. Thomas, we have one question that is actually dedicated to you, but we have to be very careful with that because it's very broad. What kind of innovation topics is PwC in? I mean, there's many, I guess. So maybe just pick one, and that is also respectively also connected to the topic of startup corporate collaboration.
Look, one of innovation is quite easy. I myself last year built up Chemondis for the German company Lanxess, which is a marketplace for trading special chemicals. So we went in as interim manager. I was the CEO, CFO, and COO in all. So this is one concrete, I guess, for innovation, building a real business model, a new one, business model innovation. And second, in the terms of acceleration program, we ourselves, we just launched a smart textile and smart fiber accelerator program, very specialized all over the world, where we will present the results, or actually the best 10 out of 50 at the end of September. In Dornbirn, in the western part of Austria, at the world biggest fiber congress. So this is also where we want to innovate. And third, last but not least, we are building ourselves currently some digital assets to make more or less out of a consulting company, a company where we have products as a service. So let's imagine that way, that we say, look, we are building more or less, if you have your personal tax income or whatever, you can upload your data, you press a button and you get it, and you pay per use and not per consulting days. So this is how we innovate ourselves, how we innovate together with clients and with industries.
Thanks so much. Maybe moving on to you, Michael. We have a question that you already are working for some years now in this field. So how many startups went through your program in total, and how did you also measure the return on invest in the end?
Yeah, just to cross-check the figures with the team, to be honest.
Yeah.
So we had 51 in the program so far. Still collaborating with 11 of them, and 29 have been connected to our business sectors. We have these 3 business sectors: life science, performance materials, and healthcare. And sometimes, if there was a better match to work directly with the business, then we connect the teams with the business as well. And ROI, coming back to the same answer as the KPI. So we did not calculate yet. Maybe we should do, but I think we get more pressure on that in the next 12 months. I would expect 18 months, but there's no figure which I came up with, which is like an ROI figure. Mm-hmm. But just to add something to what Nikita said, because it was interesting to hear from his point of view the journey, how it started, right? And also why we work with agricultural startups, which we really love, to be honest. But in these early days, we also try to, I would say, find ourselves. We started with what Nikita mentioned, innovation fields. In between, they have been defined, so now we can communicate them. We are starting the next application phase for the program in summer this year, in June. And I think now it will be more obvious for the teams why we approach them or why they should come to us, because we also further advanced on that side. And if you want to know more, there's in the first floor also the booth with the team to make some marketing for the program. Go there, talk to them, sitting here, the 3 guys in the gray sweaters, waving, then talk to them and get more information on the program and on the experience you can make.
So we talked about a lot of positive factors of this startup corporate collaboration topic. Are there any risks from corporate perspective and then also from startup perspective that you would mention?
Risks for us or for the teams? both.
On both sides.
For us, I think there are no risks, to be honest. As said, as Nikita already said, we don't have strings attached, so we don't invest 100K or something and then do equity deals. So we give less money, but we don't have strings attached, which gives us more flexibility and also does not take stuff away from the teams. From the team point of view, there could be a risk, not in our case, but maybe in other programs, if they're tied too close to a corporate, right? So we try to leave all the flexibility with the teams. If they want to work with other partners, other corporates, VCs, whatever, they should be able to do without having us in between and then maybe shocking some other investors.
But I guess your management once mentioned that, hey, what happens if we fuck up and one of the products that we launched together with a startup is failing? What does it mean to Merck? I mean, you're quite an established player with a high quality assurance. So how do management react to such?
Ask me once it happened. I don't know yet, and I hope it will never happen because we try to avoid that. Also together with the team, so with Nikita, we have processes in place and we trust each other. We know each other for some time, so we know how he's working with his startup, and he knows what we want. We know what we can expect from him. So I don't expect that, and if it happens, then we will have to deal with it.
What are the risks from the startup perspective? You have limited resources, I guess. It's like you have to focus on certain topics. What other?
Exactly. The main risk is typically your investors want to see your own KPIs, so your own sales. How is that process going? So when you launch into a collaboration agreement, you really need to explain why are you doing it kind of long term. But the big name of Merck obviously helps with that. The other risk is getting stuck into certain processes at the corporate level, such as financing or legal, that you then go through, and for the corporate it's a normal process and they're kind of all used to it, and they, let's do it on Monday, and you're like, no, I'm running out of funding, I need this now, I need this. So those kind of differences are risky, and the risk is that you dive too deep into that and you forget that you also have a core business that is actually the KPIs of which are really important to you. So that mentality you should try to keep. But those are the main risks, I would say.
Well, you mentioned money, and what's the budget that you need to consider from a startup perspective that such a collaboration with Merck, at least for a pilot, makes sense for you?
Well, it's always time. I mean, I never invested any real money into a collaboration. So it's time of my team and my time invested into defining a project, which is why that little money that Merck provides is quite good, because at least you justify it to yourself. Well, I got some money.
Are we talking about 6 digits, 5 digits? 7, 8?
I mean, my time is very, very expensive. But I settled for... But they have a good negotiations team. No. So I mean, I don't know if it changed for new generations, but right now the project funding was 30,000 euros, which extends for 2-3 months. And that allows you to kind of, set your own milestones with the internal team, so then both are engaged equally. You need to kind of comply with those milestones, and then you move to working directly with the business, and there you kind of have to make your own commercial agreement. But by that time, hopefully you already know the process well enough to also be able to estimate, okay, I will reach that agreement in this many months, because you already know how the team works. So then you can also budget for yourself. Okay, then I only spend 1 hour a week and not, every day pushing for it.
Yeah, we're running a bit out of time. Thomas, maybe one last question for you also. What was from your experience, also from your PwC experience, the risks that both had to take and what to consider when starting?
Yeah, look, like I said, first of all, I see the risk for the startup quite often that they fall apart with all the regulation rules and the expectations of the company. Because if you bring them too close to the core business, and politically and also from their DNA, corporates can bite startups away and can really let them burn out by let them doing stupid things, reporting, IT integration, data security like hell, and HR processes very slow and so on. So this is the biggest risk for startups. And for sure there is for corporates also an image risk. But that's why I always say, okay, you can even do it under a different brand. Take this example from Lanxess. It's not a Lanxess, it's a Chemondis, it's a different brand. And then the image of the big corporate is not affected if it fails, because nobody will remember about that. And I would just, because I guess this is important to add how much money a
short one, I need
corporate has to put into it. Look, you can have, and first of all, the corporate needs to know the innovation fields and the risk appetite. And this has to be supported by the board members. Because if you have a high risk appetite and you look far away from your core business in a Horizon 3 innovation, then the risk and the money you have to pay is much more than if you are close to the core. And you need to balance out in which fields you look for it. And you can have programs for 250K where you get a startup because you connect early with the right innovation idea. You know your problem, because the biggest, what I have seen failure is the corporates do not know what problem the startup should solve. They just cooperate with startups not knowing which problem they together want to solve. And then you can invest a hell of a money. Then you need 2 or 3 million, and it's a huge bucket. But the lower range is really with 250K in a corporate, you can really set up a successful screening and scouting process with successful corporations. But you can also go to the big ones and pay 2 million per year or per round.
That's something to think for everyone. So we'll stop at this point. Thanks a lot for your contribution. Thanks a lot to all the questions that we've received. There is still some left, and we are still here in the room also afterwards to talk to you about these questions. Thanks for joining us, and have a wonderful rest of the event. Thank you.
Thank you.